Alden. Okay, perfect. Okay, all right. Good afternoon, trustees, staff, and members of the public who are joining our February 3rd, 2026 Policy and Bylaw Standing Committee meeting. Trustee Kolosowski has sent his regret to join us today, and the meeting is called to order. Before we begin, I would like to invite Trustee Butterworth to deliver our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Chair. We affirm that we are all treaty people and acknowledge that the York Region District School Board is located on the lands of 2 treaties. These treaties have been signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the First Nations of the Williams Treaties, who are the Mississaugas of Alderville, Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Scugog Island, and the Chippewas of Beausoleil, Rama, and Georgina Island, who is our closest neighbor and partner in education. To honor this agreement, we will take up our responsibility to be respectful of their traditions, knowledge, and inherent rights as sovereign nations. We will respect their relationship with these lands and recognize that our connection to this land is through the continued relationship with these First Nations. And we acknowledge our shared responsibility to respect and care for the land and waters for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Butterworth, and thank you for joining our meeting this afternoon. Also like to welcome Student Trustee Hayden as well to our meeting. Approval of agenda. Without objection, the agenda as presented shall be adopted. Is there any objection, trustees? Without objection, the agenda is adopted. Declaration of conflict of interest. At this time, the chair would like to ask any trustees who has a direct personal interest or direct or indirect pecuniary interest in any matters being discussed by the board during this meeting to state the conflict and nature thereof. Approval of minutes of previous meeting. The minutes of the January 13, 2026 Policy and Bylaw Standing Committee meeting have been distributed to all trustees. Are there any correction to the minutes? Seeing, hearing none. As there are no corrections, the minutes are approved as presented. Moving on, I'd like to recognize Director Colbert to provide his remarks. Director.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Staff have prepared for you 3 policies for the committee's consideration this afternoon. Policy 131, expenses. Policy 461, cannabis, electronic cigarettes, tobacco, and a smoke-free environment. And Policy 530, staff members who are candidates for or elected to public office. We look forward to the dialogue, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Colbert. Delegations. There are no community delegations before the community this afternoon, so we'll move on directly into our policies for first review. Policy 131, expenses. I would like to recognize Policy Officer Alden Torres to share the policy for first review. Alden?
Thank you, Chair Chen, and good afternoon, trustees. Today we have Associate Director of Education and Chief Financial Officer, Service Excellence, Vidya Maharaj, Quality Assurance Manager, Nikki Kaluru, and Accounting Services Manager, Lily Lee, to share updates to Policy 131, expenses. This policy was last reviewed in 2022 and is now due for first review. This policy was developed in accordance with the broader Public Sector Accountability Act, the Ontario Public Service Travel, Meal and Hospitality Directive, the Education Act, and the Supporting Children and Students Act of 2025. The policy addresses the expectations that all expenditures, including hospitality extended to external parties, must be modest, economical, and incurred in accordance with board policies, procedures, and the BPSAA. Significant revisions were made within the policy statement to include the principles of modesty, necessity, and appropriateness, and economy. The application section was revised to reflect these principles, and a new section 3 titled Guiding Principles was also added. If approved by the committee this evening, the policy will be posted as a working document for 6 school months to gather public feedback. And with that, I'll pass it over to Vidya for any additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, I'll be turning it over to Comptroller Lagev to highlight some of the changes in the policy. And online, we also have our Manager of Accounting Services, Lily Lai, and in the audience to support around school-generated funds, we have our Manager of Quality Assurance, Nikki Kalajaru. Thank you.
Work? Okay, I can speak loud, no? Here?
You will have to speak into the microphone so the people
Okay.
online.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. The key updates include clear approval requirements for all expense types, including restriction preventing self-approval. I'm just going to go through the key highlights of the revisions that we've brought to this committee. Revised transportation and mileage rules, including home-to-home recording, commute deductions, and non-reimbursable tolls, unless they're pre-approved. There are some updates to meal allowance maximums and restriction on meals between staff unless specific conditions are met. Also, we've included some clarity requirements for professional development, especially for travel outside Ontario. We also included some controls and expectations around food provision at board-organized events with a focus on stewardship and minimizing costs. And this revision support transparency, compliance with the broader Public Sector Accountability Act, and responsible use of public funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustees, once again, I will now open the time for you to ask questions. Just make sure that the questions that you ask are germane to the policies. Are there any questions you can now? Yeah. So now I would like to recognize Trustee Cohen to ask the first question. Trustee Cohen, please go ahead. We can hear
Hi.
you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So I'd like, wait, I'm going to turn my camera on a little bit. I'm trying to turn my camera on. There we go, maybe. Yes. Hi. Okay. Thank you. I'd like to add my insights on policy 131.2. Please forgive me for being a little wordy. I've actually written down my thoughts. So policy 131.2 does not currently address mileage reimbursement for trustees when we are invited by civic officials or community leaders, such as the mayor, to attend non-political events held outside of school or board locations. These include citizenship ceremonies, Heritage Month celebrations, opening of new community centers, and many other cultural events that take place within the communities that we serve. Attendance at these events directly supports YRDSB's multi-year strategic plan, particularly the commitment to, quote, building unity, health, and well-being, fostering healthy environments and positive relationships, and affirming our diverse identities as we learn to grow together. At a time when equity, inclusion, and community trust are more important than ever, it is essential that trustees are visibly present and supported in representing the board at multicultural and community-based events. Trustees' participation in these events strengthens partnerships, enhances community engagement, supports advocacy for public education, and demonstrates our commitment to diversity, respect, and acceptance. For these reasons, I'm advocating that trustees be appropriately supported, including through mileage reimbursement when attending community events that advance board priorities, even when they are not hosted at YRDSB locations. These are my thoughts. I would just like to suggest that we reevaluate some of our present limitations regarding reimbursement for trustee gas expenses related to participating in the events previously mentioned. It's not so much the financial compensation, but rather that this important work that we do needs to feel valued. Thanks for your consideration of this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cohen. Do we have?
I can try
feedback?
through you,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. If you refer to Board Procedure number 131.2, and procedure statement clearly states that the school board will reimburse staff, trustees, and non-trustees members appointed to official board committees for distances traveled between school board office locations and on board or committee businesses. So this is general statement that would incorporate all the statements that Trustee Cohen just expressed.
Thank you very much.
May I respond, Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, it appears that that would be so because this would come under board business. But it's my experience as of late that some of the expenses that I was referring to were not accepted. And I was quite surprised that they would have been not accepted, that they were not accepted. So yes, I was a little confused about, why. And that's why I thought I'd mention this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Trustee Cohen. Trustee Cohen, thank you very much for sharing and your comments in regard to the policy. Staff will take that information back and look at the operational procedures that we're working through currently. And I'm confident between Comptroller Lagayev, Associate Director Maharaj, and Trustee Services Manager Audrey Ballard, we can work through these processes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Director. Is there any other trustees who would like to provide their comments or have a question to ask? Okay. If no, then thank you, staff, for the information and provide the clarification. And also, again, thank you for the finance team for your very sound financial stewardship. So, without objection, the recommended motion shall be adopted. That in accordance with Board Policy 285, Board Policies, Procedures, and Supporting Documents, Policy 131 expenses will be circulated for comment for the next 6 school month. Okay, without objection, the aforementioned motion is adopted. Moving on, we're going to dive into Policy 461, Cannabis, Electronic Cigarettes, Tobacco, and for a smoke-free environment. I would like to recognize Policy Officer Alden Torres to give us a general overview for this policy. Alden?
Thank you, Chair Chen. Also with us today, we have Superintendent of Education, School and System Operations, Laura Listi, and Superintendent of Education, Caring and Safe Schools and International Education, Dr. Celia De La Rove, to share updates to Policy and Procedure 461, Cannabis, Electronic Cigarettes, Tobacco, a Smoke-Free Environment, which is a revised policy title, as you trustees can see in the document there. This policy was last reviewed in 2019 and is now due for first review. This policy was developed in accordance with the Cannabis Act of 2017, the Education Act, the Smoke-Free Ontario Act of 2017, the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, and related legislation and ministry requirements listed in the legislative context section on page 3. This policy reflects the board's commitment to providing a safe and healthy working and learning environment that is free from harmful effects of cannabis, electronic cigarettes, and tobacco-related products. This policy reflects the board's commitment to providing a safe and healthy working and learning environment that is free from the harmful effects of cannabis, electronic cigarettes, and tobacco-related products. That was a duplicate, my bad. Significant revisions were made to the policy. So for instance here, the policy title was expanded to reflect other forms of substance uses. The application section was revised to clarify the full range of individuals to whom the policy applies. And a new definition of cannabis and cannabis-related products was added to the definition section. If approved by this committee this evening, the policy will be posted as a working document for 6 school months to gather public feedback. And with that, I'll pass it over to Laura and Celia for any additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Alden. So Clay and I updated the policy in consultation with several departments, and I don't want to be repetitive of what was already shared, but I think it's important to note that we did change the title to the new policy title, Policy and Procedure 461, Cannabis, Electronic Cigarettes, Tobacco, a Smoke-Free Environment. We made several changes to update the policy to be in alignment with the new multi-year strategic plan. And you can see an updated list of individuals, which is divided so that responsibilities are more clear in terms of people like superintendents and principals. And I think one of the most significant changes to the policy is that we have removed the outdated student discipline language of first time, second time, and repeat offenders. Which was generated from some very outdated legislation, and replaced it with updated progressive discipline approaches, which align more closely with our current policy 668, Caring and Safe Schools. There have been some legislative updates, so we have increased our list of legislative documents to be more inclusive and updated, and I'll ask Clay to speak now.
Thank you, everyone, through you, Chair Chen. Further to the 461.0 policy statement, application, responsibilities were also updated and separated. Some of the responsibility groups, managers, supervisors, principals were separated and also built out. Additional definitions, updated definitions were included. And if we move to the procedure, as Laura stated, we're using a more progressive discipline approach. All the one-time, second-time, et cetera, have been removed. And we're looking at, the responsibility groups. We've added coordinating superintendent of human resources, for example, and expanded the responsibilities to the different group sections for managers, supervisors, and principals. In student and stakeholder 3.6, we added a section to reflect the connection to the ministry and board standards of conduct and to provide clear expectations for students and stakeholder groups, et cetera. And then in 3.7, we also added policy 577 to the board staff update to include prescription medication, and also policy 219. As Laura indicated earlier, a lot of consultation happened with different departments. 3.6, we did remove York Region and Health Services. The rationale to remove this is that it referenced calling bylaw officers, which may be contacted as a last resort. And as well, we added those pieces to the principal's specific responsibilities and removed the third-party agency, York Region and Health Services, as we usually do not ask outside organizations to operationalize our procedures. That's it for me.
Through you, Chair Chen, we're happy to take any questions trustees may have.
Thank you very much. So trustees, online and in-person student trustees, if you have any questions, this is the time that you can put your name into the request. Okay, so let's start with Trustee Cohen. Trustee Cohen, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I was just curious, I just made a note here. How did we decide that using tobacco, cannabis, or electronic cigarettes 20 meters from school property is acceptable? Because my concern is that the students must have had possession of these substances on board property before leaving board property to use these products when they're 20 meters away. So I'm just, questioning the visibility of the students that close to the school and the reality of the fact that did they really not have them when they were in the school? Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cohen. Through you, Trustee Chen. A lot of the 20 meters was determined by bylaw, legislative and policy frameworks. So then we mirrored that in our policy and procedure.
Trustee Kuhn, do you have any follow-up? Your microphone's mute.
Thanks, okay. So can we use the fact that we see these students smoking 20 meters away, can we use that as a sign that we need to check them in school to see if they are carrying these products with them? It's kind of a giveaway, I don't know. But do we follow up on that? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair Chen. Again, similar to vapes, if students are suspect to bringing any of these products into the school building, there would be a search. And if they're noticed off the property beyond the 20 meters, there are possibilities that the administration will also call in the student to discuss more from a wellness perspective. But yes, they are searched and these products are confiscated once the administration is aware that the student is in possession of them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Moving on, I'd like to recognize Trustee Butterworth for her question. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I'm just trying to find the policy on prohibited substances per se, and of course AI gives me all this stuff and I can't find the actual policy, but cannabis is a prohibited substance, like I'm assuming all other illegal drugs. Is our policy different for a student who is, say, in possession of or under the influence of cannabis versus something else, I don't know, cocaine, whatever? Are we treating them the same since they're both illegal substances? How are we responding? Is it a different response? I guess that's my first question. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Butterworth, through you, Trustee Chen. So we referenced policy Caring a Safe School 668. So when we are aware of a student in possession of these substances, we would then follow through the progressive disciplinary steps through the 668.
So I guess my follow-up then is, I mean, I understand why we're eliminating, you know, first, second, third strike, but progressive discipline for, say, illegal prohibited substances, are we increasing or, I'm trying to think of the right word, if it's a first offense, it's an illegal substance, and, you know, people can be charged for something like that. So is progressive discipline, and I'd like an opinion on this, is this the right way to go about this, or should we be saying if you are caught in with possession or under the influence of an illegal drug that this is a mandatory suspension or something more serious than, say, the first stage of progressive discipline?
Thank you, Trustee Butterworth, and through you, Trustee Chen. Again, it would depend on the case by case. So in some instances, depending on the situation, it could be a call to police. It could be a suspension. We want to always look at the root cause, why this is happening. Progressive discipline does mean consequences, and perhaps there's social work involvement, child and youth worker support, etc. So it really depends on the situations. And again, for repeat offenders, the escalation progressive discipline would also escalate.
One last thing. Okay, totally get it. So I guess the last piece is, from the perception, because we as trustees have to work in terms of with our public and our constituents and so on, understanding like if you know the general public is aware that, you know, cannabis, kids are in possession of cannabis or any other illegal substance in a school, and their perception is this is illegal and kids shouldn't be having this, they're wanting something serious. They want us to take this seriously, which I know we are, but I think the progressive discipline piece, while I understand it, I think there needs to be something a little more, it needs to be stronger. I don't know, I'm not coming up with the right word, but it's just people think this is an illegal substance, they shouldn't have it, there should be some kind of serious consequence because they're breaking the law. My input, thank you.
And thank you again for that question. And I would reiterate, they are taken seriously. Although most of these fall into the category of discretionary calls, even to YRP, we often will connect with YRP to determine next steps. So these situations are absolutely taken seriously. Again, but it's case-by-case approach with each individual student to determine what the next steps will be. But to confirm, yes, very seriously.
Thank you very much. So thank you, Trustee Butterworth, for your questions. Those are very tough questions. Moving on, I would like to move on to Trustee Mahmood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just have a clarification to ask. In the application, so we have some exceptions, right? So there are exceptions that for Indigenous students, they are exempt based on their necessity or the need if they do in use of tobacco. Similarly, so my fear is that we also have added the wording that or for any other cultural or spiritual usage, right, or practices. How do we know that there are other, or are we just making a generic statement that there are needs, spiritual needs, other than Indigenous, because you've already defined the Indigenous, right? I'm just worried about this because I'm thinking that there's a potential, or we're leaving a door open for, or kind of a loophole, right? And I'm just concerned that, what is that? And then second part of my question is that, if there are exceptions, are there designated places in the school where they can consume that if need to be? Or is it, how the exception being applied? Like they can come in 10 meters of the school because you can't be, you know, within 20 meters, and the exception allows you to do that. So I'm just trying to understand. I couldn't find in the policy. If you can please help me there.
Thank you, Trustee Mahmood, and through you, Chair Chen. We wrote that part of the policy very much in alignment with the Ontario Smoke-Free Act as well as the Ontario Human Rights Code. So a lot of the language in our policy was taken from those two legislative source documents. And in a situation, I've been in situations where we have a smudging ceremony or something similar, and we work through the principal, and we're able to consult with our Inclusive Schools and Community Services team, as well as with legal counsel if needed. But I appreciate what you're saying, and we could certainly take that as feedback if we think that further clarification is needed within the document. So I appreciate you pointing that out to us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Trustee Mahmood. I'm going to recognize Trustee Cohen for her second question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm thinking about the students who use medical marijuana, and I wonder, how do we provide, or do we provide privacy for them? Because there is a stigma around smoking cannabis for some of the students or parents who might be passing by the 20-meter line, around the 20-meter line. So what do we do to protect them, or do we, from gossip or generally privacy matters? Thank you.
Thanks, Trustee Cohen, and through you, Chair Chen. I would say that we have a very robust student services department, and when we have individual needs for students, we would typically develop a plan for them that would include considerations like that. We would typically not have a student administering any kind of medication or participating in any needs in front of a school building. It would be on a case-by-case basis to determine how to manage that for an individual student, and there would be support from our student services team, and if necessary, clinicians such as a social worker as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Trustee Cohen. Are there any other questions from my trustee colleagues? No? Okay. Oh, hold on a sec. I think that, yeah, Trustee McCarthy just raised her hand virtually. Trustee McCarthy, please go ahead if you can hear us.
Thank you, Chair Chen. I appreciate that. Thanks for the presentation. I just have a question regarding the offenses. Are they recorded per school? And then do we keep count of these type of offenses that happen in each school? And then can we monitor them from year to year and provide more attention to whatever school we're seeing more offenses? I'm just wondering what kind of, if we are managing the numbers or if we're not. Thank you, Chair Chen.
Thank you, Trustee McCarthy, through you, Chair Chen. Again, it would depend on the group, if it's the employee group, the student population, community members, and principals have their recording tools and devices. For example, if in fact a student were to receive progressive discipline, that would be recorded accordingly, whether it's formal suspension through our Power School, et cetera, and for staff who are in breach of these policy directives, there would be steps for the principal to follow with those groups as well. So each administrator on school property would have different tools available to them to record any infraction.
If I can add as well, thank you. We have been working with our mental health team as part of the student services team that have developed a number of resources and have connections with a number of third-party community providers, government agencies, so that if a principal was to reach out to Clay, to myself, to our student services team and say, I think we need some support in our school, we're noticing that we have a problem with vaping or cigarette smoking or something like that, that team would be able to be responsive and come into the school and provide support in terms of learning for students through an assembly or education, as well as resources such as referrals to supportive agencies, and also provide training for the administrators and the staff as needed. So while discipline is one part of the solution, learning and education is a core part of what we do to address these issues in our system.
Thank you very much for the explanations. So I see no...
I have a follow-up, Chair.
Yes, go ahead, please. Yes. Yeah, your time's still good.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that. That's what I was looking for. What are we doing to positively change the habits education-wise? So I appreciate that. And I was just thinking, as a matter of tracking it, because is what we're doing working, right? So this year we had 50 offenses. I'm not necessarily talking about suspension. I'm just talking about just confiscating something. So I confiscated 50 times this year. We implemented this strategy, and next year I only had to confiscate 20 times or something like that. So if we can't track it, then we can't improve it. So that's what I was looking for. Thank you very much for all your dedication. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Trustee McCarthy. I understand that Trustee Cohen has her third question. However, that our rule says we have two. So this is why I need to ask everyone that without objection that Trustee Cohen shall be recognized for her third question. Okay, without objection. Trustee Cohen, you are recognized to ask your third question. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Actually, it was pretty well answered in the last explanation, which was great. I was just wondering if we automatically insisted on addiction support for students who are found vaping or using cannabis. You know, not a casual thing like we'll see in a year how many people are using it or how many times we found people using it, but are they automatically, sent to help when we find them using? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cohen, and through you, Chair Chen. I'm not a clinician and will not pretend to be, but in my experience as a school administrator and working with clinicians, mandating support is not always an effective or manageable solution. And that's why we have 668 progressive discipline that allows for varied and individualized support. So while I would say it's almost invariably offered, administrators, guidance counselors, teachers, our clinicians are often working with a student and a family to find the solution that's right for them. Sometimes a use of resources for a person who's not ready to engage in that level of support is not the most effective way to support them to move forward with better behavior, but those supports are available on an individualized basis.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Cohen. Okay, so without objection, the recommended motion shall be adopted, that in accordance with Board Policy 285, Board Policies, Procedures, and Supporting Documents, Policy 461, Cannabis, Electronic Cigarettes, Tobacco, a smoke-free environment will be circulated for comment for 6 school months. Without objection, the aforementioned motion is adopted. Thank you, Laura and Clay, for your presentation. Moving on, we're going to look into Policy 530, staff members who are candidates for or elected to public office. Once again, I would like to recognize Policy Officer Alden Torres to give us a brief overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Chen. And finally, we have General Counsel Fanny Im, Trustee Services Manager Audrey Ballard, Executive Officer Corporate Communications Lucinio Miguelo, and Policy Officers Daniel Roberto and I to share updates to Policy 530, staff members who are candidates for or elected to public office. This policy is due for first review and was last reviewed in 2022, aligning with the election years in which this policy is reviewed. This policy outlines the responsibilities of individuals employed by the school board who wish to stand for election to public office at the municipal, provincial, or federal level. This policy was developed in accordance with the Education Act and the Municipal Elections Act. For this review, staff examined the legislation, including any changes, and confirmed that no updates were required. If approved by the committee this evening, the policy will be posted as a working document for 6 school months to gather public feedback. And with that, I'll pass it over to Lucinio and team for any additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Alden, and through you, Mr. Chair, just very, very briefly, as you'll notice in 2.6, just some minor language changes to ensure that we are compliant with existing legislation. Otherwise, the policy remains more or less unchanged. Happy to take any questions or feedback. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustees, do you have any questions? You may raise your hand or type your name in the chat. Oh, okay, yes. Student Trustee Hayden, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just wondering about number 530, section 2.6.1, school board trustee elections. So it says, if elected to the position of school board trustee, the trustee must resign before taking declaration of office or such period of time if they're like a staff member. I just wanted to ask why that is. So if, for example, a staff member was a teacher, could they, since trustee is a part-time job, could they do both concurrently, or would that be a conflict of interest?
Thank you, Student Trustee Lai. Through you, Mr. Chair, that is to be in compliance with legislation. Any staff member who is a staff member of any school board cannot hold office with the school board as a trustee.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayden. Anyone else has a question regarding this policy? Okay, well, thank you, Lucinio. So without objection, the recommended motion shall be adopted, that in accordance with Board Policy 285, Board Policies, Procedures, and Supporting Document, Policy 530, staff members who are candidate for or elected to public office will be circulated for comment for 6 school months. Without objection, the aforementioned motion is adopted. Thank you very much. Moving on, we are going to look at the information items. Before our committee is the draft policy review schedule for 2026. Again, I'd like to recognize Alden Therese to provide the overview. Alden?
Thank you, Chair Chen, and I'm happy to answer any of trustees' questions. Thank you.
Okay, I see there are no questions. Thank you very much. So next on the item is the date for our next meeting. Our next Policy and Bylaw Standing Committee meeting is scheduled to be on March 3rd, 2026. And if there are no further business, the meeting this afternoon is adjourned. Thank you very much, staff, member of the public, and my trustee colleagues. Thank you for attending the meeting. And for all the members of the public, if you have any questions or comments regarding any of the policy that we discussed, you may always contact our policy teams anytime to provide your feedback. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a very happy afternoon. Thank you.